Hello everyone and welcome to another weekly recap. The Custa News Network is back. Obviously, we just had a crazy week for the mid-season tournament and it was awesome. It was awesome. We had the East taking on the West. We had some LAN matches happening for the West side. Obviously, the East were unable to travel, but it was a banger of a tournament. Probably the best tournament we've ever had in Overwatch League. Oh my god, so many donations.
Just to clarify, Josh Wilkinson is very bald.
That is true. Josh Wilkinson is an egg, as we've all found out. Thank you for the 5 for this week. But yes, and that's the thing about it is it was a great tournament. It was awesome to see these teams compete. There were a lot of surprises, and we're going to talk about the entire tournament, what happened with each of the teams later when we have a look at the pick and bracket. But we're going to go over some things, just do some housekeeping, stuff that you might have missed on in the last week or two that have been happening. So, here we go. Beginning with Soe. Soe, want to give big congratulations to her. She had her baby. She has had Elodie. Big congratulations to her. Everyone's healthy. I believe they're both doing great, which is awesome to hear. Looking forward to meeting her. Seeing Soe again, having her back on watch point, but obviously she's on maternity leave for now. So big congratulations to Soe. Moving on, big dubs. Let's talk about the L's of the league. We have the Vancouver Titans have decided to part ways with Shockwave. They say gave a big thank you, but not a lot of context outside of that. Shockwave said in his own personal tweet that it was not his decision. He says, he hopes the team does well, but there's obviously been something there that we don't fully understand. Shockwave has been probably one of the best players for them in terms of DPS, other than Aspire. But it felt like Shockwave Aspire was starting to come into their own, especially in the mid-season tournament. It was like they just play Aspire Shockwave. Shockwave plays Hitscan. Aspire plays Tracer. Seems good. Right? It felt like we were good. In their final match, we got the Mirror Tracer, Aspire Hitscan, which, Aspire can play Hitscan, but Mirror's Tracer was questionable. So I don't really know why this decision is being made. The context doesn't seem there. And if you don't really understand why something is happening, then we probably don't have all the information. Maybe they want to pick up a different player. Maybe they want another tank. It's hard to really know what's going on at the Vancouver Titans, but for right now, they are struggling. It's a strange one. I don't really get it. I think Shockwave has been starting to step up. Maybe someone else will pick him. There were rumors that they were trying to trade Shockwave away, but no one wants him. If they're trying to trade them, people probably don't want to pay the buyout, pay the trade fees, all that kind of stuff. So most teams will probably we're not going to buy him, but if you drop him, he might get picked up. Could absolutely see him going to a team like the Paris Eternal. Have Wub. Oh my god, I'm forgetting. Wub, Dove, and Shockwave. That's a good 3 DPS duo. Think that covers a lot of bases. Definitely could be a good signing for them. So we'll see what happens with the Vancouver Titans. Will they get a win one of these days? It's hard to really know. Let's talk about the beta. I don't really know what I was looking for here, but the beta is over. The Beta 2, we have the Royal Knight skin that, we promote so much in the Overwatch League. Go check that out. 200 League tokens to go get that one. It's available until sometime that I don't have on my screen. But the more important thing is the Beta 2 is over. We can no longer play Overwatch 2, and now I'm depressed, along with a lot of other people. We don't really know when the Beta 3 is going to happen, if there is going to be a Beta 3. There's been some rumors and assumptions based on, there's going to be another hero that they probably want to test out and make sure the bugs don't work. Maybe they have an open beta before the game fully releases. Lots of assumptions. I would assume a Beta 3 is coming, and hopefully we'll be able to try the new support hero. And they also need to test Moira. The changes that they made to Moira aren't good. I hated the changes that they did to the weaken spell. I think it's either completely useless 90% of the time or completely overpowered 10% of the time. There needs to be some moves around those changes on what is going to be good and what is going to be bad. I think reducing the cooldown of the weaken spell while reducing the effectiveness of their weaken spell is probably the best way forward, because right now it just feels like she doesn't do anything. It just felt weird. I didn't think it was overpowered. I thought it was anything. It was pretty weak. But honestly, it's hard to really know when you're not playing in a competitive environment. But that's where we're at with Overwatch 2 and everything that's going on. So keep your ear to the ground. I'll probably update you guys when Beta 3 gets announced and when we hear more from the developers. So that's it for the weekly stuff. That's pretty much everything that happened. I have talked about Guangzhou before. People asked me to talk about Guangzhou. We talked about it. They had done pretty much a complete rebuild of their roster. They dropped... all right, let me actually hit it real quick before we move on, because so many people have asked for this that I think we've forgotten, but I'm pretty sure I covered this already. Let me find out where it is. So essentially what they did is they dropped... Rio, they dropped Develop, and they dropped Unique. Those are the 3 players that they dropped from their roster. So these are 3 players that I think, we were excited about, but they have been pretty underwhelming throughout the entirety of the season so far. Develop just never really came into his own on hitscan, other than like on Ash from time to time. They also dropped Coach Youngjin. So they're just dropping everyone. Unique and main support never really lived up to the hype. And Rio, phenomenal player who's been with them for a while, but has just not been cutting the mustard as of late. So they made these drops, which would usually make you worried. But the signings that they made are the exciting thing for this Guangzhou Charge roster. We can have a look at them here. They signed Xerneas, which... For the uninitiated, Xerneas is Yveltal from the Chengdu Hunters. So Yveltal has rebranded and is now Xerneas. So he's a great player. We all know that he is a great main support. Excited to see him come. They signed Jimmy. My boy Jimmy, who apparently everyone says I'm a super fan of, but honestly, I haven't said many nice things about him. But I'm excited to see Jimmy fucked. I hope Jimmy fucks for the Guangzhou Charge. I might be a Guangzhou Charge fan on the back of that. Mr. Fucks himself. And then we have one more player. We have Aprita being signed. So Aprita is... can someone confirm for me? I thought Aprita was more of a hit scan player than a Tracer player. So is Jimmy... How are they going to play Jimmy and Aprita? I know Aprita is more flexible than just being a hit scan player. I would have more put him on the realm of a lip style of player where he does play hit scan. It's his best. But he also has flexibility in him as well if needed. So I don't really know how these two are going to play. I believe Choicer One is still on the roster. So Choicer One, Jimmy, Aprita. Seems good. I don't know how much Jimmy's going to play. If anything, he might be an Arns level player for the Guangzhou Charge. But we'll see. Didn't these players lose contenders games this morning? Not sure. That happened. Who really knows? But excited to see some changes for this Guangzhou Charge roster and at least trying to go in a better direction, because what they're doing right now was not working and they kind of suck. So who's their tank? They still have Krong. They still only have Krong as their tank right now, as far as I'm aware. So, which is not bad. Krong is a talented player, hasn't been playing that well, but hopefully if they put more resources, more time, they can't be worse, is, I guess, my context. Is this going to turn this season around and make them all of a sudden a top 4 APAC team? Probably not. But hopefully they can start beating teams like the Valiant, like the Chengdu Hunters. Surely they will be fine. Let's move on, though. Let's talk about the Midseason Madness tournament and the teams and matches that we got to see. So let's start with the upper bracket and talk about these games. Individually, I'm not sure if I'm going to remember every single match, but let's just enjoy it and go from there. So we have... All right, don't look at what I have. Just look at the results here. These are actually what happened. So we saw in the beginning, the London Spitfire beat the Atlanta Reign, which was pretty shocking. Everyone's like, oh, Atlanta Reign, they're going to suck this tournament. They look like their weak selves. The London Spitfire, they are the truth. They are going to beat everyone. Not really how it went down. The Atlanta Reign went on a crazy lower bracket run, making it all the way into the losers bracket finals, where they lost to the Gladiators, where they put up a pretty good fight against the Gladiators, but obviously something just was not working. Maybe they thrive off of the pressure of being in the losers bracket, but the Atlanta Reign had a crazy run, good tournament, excited to see more from this team, as we always talk about. The potential is there, and when they live up to that, when they when they're playing for money, as Gator likes to say, they are a different beast. While the London Spitfire came to a disappointing halt in the tournament. So obviously winning this first match against Atlanta, but then getting beaten by the San Francisco Shock, obviously one of the best teams that we had in the tournament. But then they lost to Philly. Wait, no, who did they lose to? I'm trying to look where this is very hard to follow. Okay, never mind. We're going to Wikipedia. This is just too hard to follow. Where can I look for the midseason madness? Oh, there we go. Just do that. All right, let's just find the bracket here. This is way easier. All right, sweet. So they fell down to the lower bracket and they lost to the Florida Mayhem in a reverse sweep. This was a tragic moment for the London Spitfire. They were so ahead in this match, and then we went over to that Gibraltar, and someone and Exy were just like, you know what? I don't feel like losing today. And they just put on an absolute clinic of how to beat the London Spitfire. And unfortunately, Spitfire get knocked out in the lower bracket. But if you are the London Spitfire, you can't be too disappointed in these results. They are 8-4 in the regular season. They have the lowest budget by a considerable margin in the league. Like, it just feels like they're working with nothing, and what they've accomplished is impressive. Yes, they could have done better in the tournament. Yes, it would have been awesome for them to get over Florida Mayhem, but it is what it is. You know, you can't look down on them for having one bad performance in that. So Checkmate did his part too. Yeah, Checkmate really stepping up. It was cool to see them integrating So Jet a little bit more from time to time. Honestly, you know, Florida had some pretty cool pop-off moments towards the end. But let's go back up to the upper bracket because we're getting a little out of sorts. I'm really just going to talk about these teams as a whole, and we're going to talk about their things. So let's talk about the Shanghai Dragons. Pretty disappointing result from the Shanghai Dragons, all things considered. So they beat the Toronto Defiant in the first round, which was to be expected. Toronto Defiant, they actually played pretty well in this matchup. You know, 3-0 doesn't really show how close this match was, and Toronto did show up. But Shanghai Dragons, they beat Toronto Defiant, then they beat the Dallas Fuel, and we're like, oh shit, maybe Shanghai can make a run. Lip went absolutely crazy in this match against Dallas. But then, you know, Lip went crazy throughout the entirety of the tournament. It was honestly the other players on the Shanghai Dragons that just weren't really living up to expectation. Void was not, I don't think Void won a map in the entire tournament when he was playing. Maybe he did in these first two series. But Void just, when he came in to play Sigma on like Circa Real, not showing up. Fate having some good moments with flexibility, but other times just looked a little lost. The backline, Lee Jae-gon, Izayaki just don't have that firepower that we know them for. It felt like they were just too inconsistent, dying too easily. And then Fleta is just not the meta anymore. His Tracer is fine, but just not that great. His Echo is probably his best hero. But other than that, it just doesn't feel like Fleta is having that same level of firepower as some of these other DPS players, you know, rookie players that are coming in. And they lost to San Francisco Shock pretty convincingly. Like, this was just straight up not a close match. And then they went to the lowers bracket and just got beaten by the Atlanta Reign. And honestly, this was a pretty convincing matches. So disappointing losses for the Dragons. I don't know if the circumstances of they're living in China through COVID protocols, they just have been struggling, but this has not been the same level of dominance from the Dragons that we know them for in the last couple of years. And, you know, your dynasty can only last so long. Like, this might be the beginning of the end of the Shanghai team, at least in its current state, right? They didn't make any changes, really. Like, they added Bebe and lost Molly, which I think is a downgrade. They didn't really make any changes from last season to this season, and I think that's starting to catch up to them. There were better rookies. There were other players that are better than their counterparts in the Shanghai Dragons, and I think that they're finally starting to, you know, they're never going to be a bad team with this roster, but are they going to be a championship caliber team? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that Shanghai Dragons will ever be able to beat the San Francisco Shock or the Gladiators in their current form unless they make some pretty big sweeping changes or they find just a really good meta for themselves, because I think they're probably destined to stay top 6 right now. And, you know, talking about Shanghai Dragons, let's talk about the Dallas Fuel, because I think this is a team that is going to have the same issues in the same vein. Dallas Fuel, they lost in the first round to the Shanghai Dragons, went to the lower bracket, lost to the Philadelphia Fusion. I don't know I think fundamentally the issues for the Dallas Fuel is their DPS lineup just doesn't make sense. They have the issue of they're splitting Fearless and Hanbin, so they can only play one of them. So not being able to play both of them at a time and have them as a constant seems to really be hurting them. They have to sort of pick their poison, which one they want in. But then like Gurio, Edison, Sparkle, which seems to be the 3 primary rotation they're doing, it's just underwhelming, like across the board. Gurio is a middling hit scan player in comparison to the rest of the league. Sparkle is not one of the best traces we have in the league. His Genji has some really good pop-off moments, but Genji's just not that meta right now. And his Tracer, I'm not going to say it's D tier, but it's definitely not proper Kevster, fucking Venom. Like, he's just not that same level of performer, in my opinion, on that Tracer. And then we have Edison, who, he played that great Reaper, but other than that, what does he play that's better than other people at the high end, And keep in mind, I'm comparing Dallas Fuel to the best teams in the league because that's the expectation that we have from them. As a roster, we expect them to be dominant. We expect them to be good, especially after their last couple of years. But I think they're suffering from what I was talking about with the Dragons, where it feels like they didn't make enough big changes in their roster and they were sort of relying on their players to have the same level of performances that they had in the previous years. And they're just not. They're just not performing to that level. And it feels like they're always trying to fall back onto what was good a couple of years ago. And when I say that, I specifically mean Lucio Moira, right? They always keep going back to this Lucio Moira comp. And people can say, Lucio Moira is better. That's why people are playing it. We haven't seen success for that Lucio Moira composition in the league in ages. Like, when was the last time we really had that much success with a Lucio Moira comp? It just doesn't work consistently enough, in my opinion, especially when you're in a meta where Zenyatta is buffed out the wazoo with 225 health with that kick. It's just shocking to me that it feels like Dallas Fuel are just leaning onto that. And it feels like instead of trying to learn something new, they're just sort of defaulting back to what will win them certain maps against middling teams, but it's not going to win them the tournament. And that's what cost them in this tournament, and we see them struggle. Let's talk about the Toronto Defiant. Toronto Defiant, as I said, there's not a whole lot to say. Definition of mid. Like, they're just a mid team right now. They put up some good performances against Shanghai. They almost knocked the Houston Outlaws out in the lower bracket, but Houston Outlaws were able to hold on. But they were they're just fine. Like, they didn't step up to a crazy degree. Like, yeah, Hisu had some good pop-off moments. The backline, Twilight Churung was kind of good at times, but it's just not, like, there's not a whole lot to say about this team in this tournament. Played 2 matches. They were fine. They didn't look like the worst team in the tournament, but just not exciting to talk about or watch. So let's talk about the Houston Outlaws then, actually, because I think that's an important next step. So Houston Outlaws came out against the Florida Mayhem and dominated them. Houston Outlaws dominated the Florida Mayhem, and Jake made a tweet after it of being like, all of our players are peaking at the right time. And I agreed with him. Like, I thought they were looking incredibly solid in this Florida Mayhem match. I was like, Florida Mayhem's not going to show up to play in this tournament. They look like they don't really know what they're doing. Houston Outlaws, on the other hand, looking like everyone's firing on all his cylinders. Merritt had a great tournament on that Sojin. We had Pelican being able to sort of do whatever he wants, play that Tracer or that Genji. Dante Doomfist was working. Piggy's flexibility was there when necessary. Like, backline's doing backline things in a double flex support meta. It honestly looked like it was going to be good. And then they go to the lower bracket after losing to Los Angeles Gladiators. That loss to Los Angeles Gladiators, if I remember correctly, that was not a close series. And I remember that happening because I was like, damn, Jake talked up about them peaking, but then they got booty bopped by the Gladiators. And obviously that's to be expected. Gladiators are a better team. But I feel like that sort of, it all started to flow away from them and their confidence in that, because after that loss to the Gladiators, they fall down to the Toronto Defiant, and that was a close series. Outlaws are just map 5 clutch lords these days apparently, but able to just hold off against the Toronto Defiant, and then they go up against the Atlanta Reign and lose. Lose to the Atlanta Reign. Obviously Atlanta was on a different level. I think the Houston Outlaws, if they were on the other side of the bracket, would they have beaten Philly? Would they have beaten Florida? Maybe. right? So like maybe the side of the bracket that they ended up, a lot of teams lost to the rain, so you can't really blame them for that. It's just disappointing to see the Outlaws go out again. I had a Houston Outlaws fan tweet at me, as they always seem to do, being like, Custa, you can't say that they haven't made improvements. You can't say that it is disappointing for them as a team when they won 2 matches in this tournament. It's like, yeah, but they still got knocked out in this lower bracket in the second round, right? And that's the exact same thing that happened in the kickoff clash. Houston Outlaws got to the kickoff clash, beat the Toronto Defiant in a map 5 banger, and then lost in the second round. Yeah, they beat Florida Mayhem in the upper bracket, like what felt like the most useless match in the history of times. But yeah, they won that match, so they won 2 and lost 2. But this is still a disappointing performance for the Outlaws. They have still yet to have that result that makes you go like, shit, Houston is a contender. Houston can come to play in these tournaments. I think losing in this round is another disappointing result for them. I don't think this was a disappointing performance as a whole. Like, I think they played pretty well. But as a result, I think disappointing once again. And I feel like that's going to hurt for them. Houston is firmly the 4th best team in NA. I don't think you can say firmly. I think in this tournament, you can say that, yeah. Like, they were better than Dallas, they were better than Florida, and they were better than Toronto. Yeah, sure. Yeah, in this tournament. But I also think this was a great meta for the Houston Outlaws. Right? Like, this was a really good meta for them. They could play double flex support. It was a double flex support meta. They could play Dante on the Doomfist a lot of the time. Piggy could sub in to play the Sigma. They weren't forced to play the Winston too much. And then you have Merritt, who's playing Sojin, who is like one of the better Sojins that we have in the league, right? Like, how are they going to perform if we have a hard meta shift? I'm not sold that the Outlaws are going to be able to play other tournaments. Other tournaments with other metas. And that's my fear for this Outlaws, is I thought this was their best opportunity to make a deep run through the lower bracket. So yes, right now in this tournament, I'd probably say they were the 4th best team. Like, you can make an argument for the London Spitfire, maybe, but I think they were the 4th best team in this tournament in the West. But I guess we'll know. All right, so let's talk about some of these other teams then. Let's keep going with the lower bracket and teams that were knocked out early. So let's talk about the Florida Mayhem. Because I think Florida just sort of, the limitations of their roster are starting to come through. Exy, I think, has been a great pickup for them. I think he has that individual pop-off hit scam moment that I think they were lacking. Like, Hydron was solid and consistent, and I think that led to a more consistent approach of how they played the game. But Exy just every now and then just shows up and just murders everyone. I think their coordination with Exy in, just from like a fucking throwing a dart at a wall, I think is worse. Like, I think there's this major disconnect sometimes between like someone, Exy, and the backline, and Animo. Like, Animo's ults were a little sussy in this tournament. They're going back and forth between RuPaul and Sir Majed. I think they did fine. I don't think you can be disappointed with their performance. They did get that win against the London Spitfire with a great reverse sweep. But the big standout for the Florida Mayhem in this tournament, in my opinion, was Checkmate. I think Checkmate had a great performance on the Tracer and the Genji. I think he really showed his value as a player. He isn't that standout DPS player that's going to completely take over the game, but he was doing his job, and he was helping them win maps and matches on his performances, something that we probably haven't really seen as much from him in the past. So excited to see more from this Florida Mayhem roster. Are they ever going to be championship caliber contenders? No, not with the roster they have, but I think they'll keep making these tournaments, and you can't be too disappointed with their results thus far. Who haven't we talked about that? Let's hit the Soul Dynasty, a team that only played 2 matches in this tournament. Man, this was a disappointing tournament for Soul Dynasty. Like, I was like on the fence of, should I put the Gladiators first? Should I put the Soul Dynasty first? I think in some things I said Soul were going to win. Some things I said Gladiators were going to win. But man, this was a crazy failure by the Soul Dynasty as an entire unit. I think Prophet and Smurf were good. I think that you cannot be too upset with how Prof and Smurf played. Did they have their carry performances that we've seen from them in the past? No. But they were doing their job. The people that weren't doing their job was Stalker, was Fitz, and the backline especially. The backline of Seoul Dynasty, I think, were the ultimate crux of the issue for this Dynasty roster. They just could not stay alive. And they're going up against the Spark. But the Spark dive is Alpha Yi Bernard. It's not the best dive that we have in the world, but they got fucking rolled. They were dying for free. They were on different wavelengths. They were not working together. Shy was getting big picks against them, as he did against everyone. But at the end of the day, they just, we were so hyped up about Creative and Vindame. They were playing pretty well in the qualifiers, especially Vindame showing his flexibility on that Zenyatta. But Vindame on that Zenyatta, his ultimates were atrocious. His transcendences were I think 50% of them were throws. I honestly think 50% of his transcendences were bad ultimates. And he had some pop-up individual moments, but as a whole, they just were not coordinating well. And then they go up against the Atlanta Reign, and they just did not deal well with the aggressive style. We talk about, the Kai, Venom, Hawk aggressive style. Once again, the backline failed. The front line did a good job of stepping up in certain maps, but at some point, I don't think you need to change the backline. I think Creative Vindame is a good roster, but you have to look at them and be like, this is where we need to see fundamental change. That was two disappointing losses. I don't think anyone predicted Seoul to go out in the first round of the bracket. Obviously losing to Atlanta and the thing, Atlanta was, looking at it now, the hardest opponent that Seoul had to play in the lower bracket. So, but still, you can't be too disappointed by it. All right, who's next? Dallas Fuel. Did we talk about Dallas? Yeah, we already talked about Dallas, about their DPS woes. Who haven't we talked about that started making it further? Let's talk about the Philadelphia Fusion. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Fusion. I think Philly had a pretty good performance, all things considering. They were entertaining to watch. Let's say that. They were the definition, in Ovally's words, of comebackable. They were just always playing on the edge. They lost to Spark in the first round, which to some of us felt like an upset at the time, but Spark, we know in that tournament, were really good. So that wasn't too bad of a loss. I think Shy just really showed up on a different level, dominated MN3. Philly did not have an answer if MN3 was not able to get going. Zest had some questionable moments, but hey, MN3 and Zest redeemed themselves in the lower bracket. First of all, beating the Dallas Fuel in a pretty, comfortable win there. I think that they were the better team. They had that crazy match against Florida Mayhem. Somehow, we end up on Night Market, and we get to see MN3 just go fucking crazy against the Florida Mayhem. It was also honestly an awesome match. Is it clean Overwatch? Absolutely not. Is it completely derived on individual brilliance? 100%. Bellis Rhea, I'm going to say it, is the best ball in the league. I genuinely think Bellis Rhea is the best ball. Maybe he could work on diving better, but mechanically, the best ball in the league. His mechanics on ball, he just is seamlessly moving around the map. He is doing so much. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't get caught. He's just unkillable. Mikey, I think Bellis Rhea is a better ball than Mikey. Mikey looks better individually because he is surrounded by the San Francisco Shock. That's my take. You guys can disagree with me. You can say Mikey's better. I feel like we've barely seen enough of Mikey Ball. I guess we haven't seen that much Bellis Rhea, but it's a treat when I watch Bellis Rhea play a ball. Yeah, sometimes he just feels like he's playing parkour and rolling around the map for the sake of rolling around the map, but I like his mechanics. But yeah, I think they had that individual brilliance, but the buck had to stop somewhere, and surprisingly, it was not against the Guangzhou Spark. Shy tried his goddamn darndest to carry the Guangzhou Spark. Oh my god. And I do not apologize when I say, because we're talking about the Spark now, I do not apologize when I say it reminds me of the 2018 Shanghai Dragons. Shy is the best hit scan in the world, and he proved it in this tournament. he is just flawless. He had like an 80% railgun accuracy. They just put all of their resources somewhere along the line. Changoon had to have walked into the room and just been like, guys, you're all talented players, but we're going to put all of that talent into Shy. Just pocket Shy, let him win the game for us. That Dorado against Philadelphia Fusion was ridiculous. Dude just went crazy. Every single time he pressed overclock, he killed at least 3. It was crazy. Was it a great strategy? Was it going to win them the tournament? No, but it almost got them there. It almost got them that win over the Fusion in a way in which it felt like they had no business being in that series, because across the board, the Fusion were a better team, except on that hit scan roll. So one of the best individual tournament performances we've seen from Shy and from a hit scan player. That peak was absolutely ridiculous. You know, like the backline for Spark, they were solid in the tournament. Bernard had some good moments of brilliance. Gushue played some Winston. He was there. Alpha Yi had some really good Tracer moments. But definitely the star of the show for the Spark was Shy, who did lose to Philadelphia Fusion, going back to that team. And yeah, Philadelphia Fusion eventually losing to the aggressive style of the Atlanta Reign. It felt like Zest and M3 were not able to have that same level of pop-off against the Reign. The coordinated aggressive dive from the West just seemed to catch the East off guard in a lot of ways. And that's sort of the narrative of this tournament. So let's talk about these other teams and the 3 teams from the West that were the best. The Atlanta Reign, the San Francisco Shock, and the Los Angeles Gladiators proved that the top end of the West, let me put that there. I don't give a shit about comparing Guangzhou Charge versus the Vancouver Titans. I don't care. You want to make an argument that one of them is better than the other? Sure. Whatever. I don't care. The top end of the West is better than the top end of the East, which inherently makes the West a better region. Because the high-end play and the caliber play at the top is better. San Francisco Shock and the Gladiators and the Atlanta Reign. Let's start with the Reign. No one expected this lower bracket run. They beat Seoul, they beat Houston, they beat Dragons, they beat Philly, they didn't beat the Gladiators, but they were close against the Gladiators, right? The Atlanta Reign was very close to winning that Coliseum, if I remember correctly. You could see the emotion on Hawk. He knew how close they were. If they won that map 4, they could have gone to map 5, and anything can happen in map 5. So you got to give props to Atlanta Reign. Props to the coaching staff as well, recognizing their win conditions. Atlanta seems to always understand what their best path forward is when push comes to shove in the playoffs. Play around that Hawk Doomfist. He is the thing that is going to do us best. If we have to switch, we will switch. Venom primarily into play that Tracer. He was so good on that Tracer. He had a standout performance. He went toe-to-toe with Prophet. He went toe-to-toe with all of these other superstar players that we talk about on these other teams. He went toe-to-toe, held his own. Kai doing Kai shit. I don't think Kai was as impactful as sometimes we give it credit for. Like, I think, yes, he is dominant. Yes, he's, probably top 4, top 3 of the Sojins in this tournament. But he wasn't the best. And he had some of those crazy moments. But it wasn't like Shy level performance, but he was consistent. And that's the thing that I like about Kai, is it felt like he was always there, always putting on pressure. And then UV OG, I think having that flexibility of OG being able to play that Zenyatta was big for them. And also being able to play fast up that tempo by playing the Lucio. It was an awesome performance. I don't know how Atlanta Reign keep getting away with it. They're just a different beast. They're Lanimals in every single way. And you got to be excited for them once again, getting them. So let's talk about the San Francisco Shock then before we talk about the Gladiators. San Francisco Shock looked to be the best team in this tournament. No one had an answer. Shock were dominating everybody, right? Like, they dismantled the London Spitfire. They crushed the Shanghai Dragons. Then we went to that map 5 banger against the Gladiators when we really started to see some real back and forth. A big interesting thing that happened between in their other matches to the grand finals is they played a lot of Colluge. It felt like 50-50 Colluge and Mikey until we got to the grand finals where Mikey played a lot. It makes sense, some of the maps that were being played. Mikey is their Winston Wrecking Ball player, so if they're going to play Dorado, they want to play Mikey. If they're going to play Oasis, they're going to play Mikey. A lot of control, they're going to play Mikey. A lot of push, they're going to play Mikey, so that's why we did see a lot of that. But they were able to play double flex support. They could play They were playing Finn on that Zenyatta. Violet was able to play that Ana. It was good. Their backline was looking solid. Kaluj, that flexibility of able to play that Diva, which was a different look that other teams didn't really have a great answer to, was awesome. It was awesome to see like these different metas and these different team compositions being map dependent as well. And that's what made this tournament so good is we saw so many different looks. There was styles of teams, there was map styles, there was, so many different looks from so many different heroes. I think San Francisco Shock really pioneered that, even getting in this, upper bracket final map, we were seeing a Roadhog mirror of all fucking things. But San Francisco Shock, they did win this winner bracket final. They looked to be the better team. I think Proper was the best. Even with that shy performance, I think Proper was the best individual player in this tournament. Kilo, I think, was also, I liked seeing more Kilo, less Sam, but even Sam, when he came in, was very good. That Torbjorn on Lijiang in the finals, Sam was great on that Sojourn, great on that Torb, great on that Echo, sort of that pinch player for control. I really liked what we got from Sam as well. Honestly, everyone really putting in a good performance for the Shock throughout the rest of the tournament, but not the grand finals. I think the grand finals is when we really started to see the true form of the Gladiators. Shu said in the interview after losing in the winner's bracket, this loss to the Shock, they said we just made too many mistakes. The Shock made mistakes, but we made more. And I think that was true. Like, it felt like it was scrappy from times. Like, the ultimate usage wasn't really there. It felt like the coordination went out the window from time to time. And it just sort of, the players and the teams were just relying on individual brilliance. Kevstar, I think, was rock solid this entire tournament. He did get beaten by Proper, I think, in this upper bracket, but Kevstar was always doing his job, and he was always doing what he needed to do. Yeah, sometimes Proper got the better end of him, but that was usually when the entire team of the Shock was getting the better end of the Gladiators. I think Paddy Pan was solid on that Sojourn. I consistently have fears about Paddy Pan, and then he puts him to rest in the playoffs. I think he was solid. I don't think he was making as many mistakes as he has in the past. And then Arns came in to play that Widowmaker, came alive in the grand finals. I actually think Arns was weak in a majority of this tournament. Arns really, I was like, man, is Arns washed? Like, is Arns just not going to be able to compete with these young guns of like Kilo? Like, he lost to Shy in this matchup. He lost to Kilo in this one. But man, in the grand finals, Arns said, hell no, I'm coming alive, especially on that Dorado. He really started to step up. So it was awesome to see some peak Arns come in the grand finals, sort of make his presence known, answer the haters of why he is on this Gladiators roster and he is valuable where he needs to come. Reiner, I think, had a good tournament of doing what he is needed to be done. But here's my hot take. I think Reiner is being overrated. Right now, people are saying he should be the MVP of the league. He did not have an incredible tournament. He was good. He did his job. He is one of the main reasons the Gladiators won. He was great, but he was not perfect. He was getting caught a lot. He was very aggressive. He had some crazy pop-off moments, but he had series and he had maps where he just died and that kind of stuff, which is, the life of a tank player sometimes, right? Is he Rookie of the Year candidate? Absolutely. He should absolutely be a Rookie of the Year candidate, but he is not having the same level of performances as some of the other MVP people that we're talking about, and he's not perfect. He's a rookie. He is not perfect. But I think he had a great tournament nonetheless. The backline, Shu is always going to do Shu things, always having that aggressive style, that offensive style. They have Skewed come and play that Zenyatta. He had that one really good Gibraltar map against the Gladiators. I think that might have been the upper bracket finals. Oh, maybe that was the grand finals. But yeah, Skewed has his moment. And then Funny Astro on that Lucio, just something that no one else was really able to mimic on that. Anytime they went to Ilios, man, I was just in fucking awe of how much work Funny Astro does. He never dies, does more healing, more damage than like anyone else. He just is just so impressive. It's, you got to give massive props to Funny Astro. Honestly, the entire Gladiators roster, mad respect to those guys. They absolutely deserve to win this tournament. Their tenacity, their ability to come back after losing to the Shock, it was an awesome run for them. And that was the tournament. The best in the best tournament of Overwatch I think we've ever had. You know, I think there was just so many competitive games. I think 90 of 118 maps that could have been played were played. The grand finals wasn't a complete wash. You know, there was that bit of excitement of like, oh my God, is the San Francisco Shock finally gonna do it? Yeah, it would have been awesome if it was in a stadium, if it was in a LAN, but hey, you can't complain when the games are like that. So I'm excited to see. Ended in a C9. I don't think the ending was a C9. That's the definition of not what a C9 is. Mikey couldn't touch the point because he was 1 health. He made a mistake of going too early to the point, so he was 1 health before he got there. What's his face? Proper could have got there. Probably should have been communicated for him to be the one to touch because Mikey got too low. But he also needs to pressure Arns. If he doesn't pressure Arns, Arns is just going to free fire and kill everyone. So it's like, it's not really a C9 if you were forced off of the point and you were forced to not get there. It's not what a C9 is. So, but it was a long week. It was a long week of games. I am fucking exhausted because of it. Assume you guys are as well. But yeah, it was interesting, but it was a good tournament. Awesome to see. So let's end it with my power rankings. So now we're going to do power rankings. I'm not going to talk about this bottom again. I don't really care about these teams. You know, there's obviously been a lot of changes. We don't know what meta's going to happen. There's no point in ranking them. But let's just do a rough preseason rankings of where we think these other teams are. Gladiators are going to be first, 100%. San Francisco Shock are going to go second. I don't think you can argue with that. I'm actually going to put a tier break below them here. And I'm going to put Atlanta at number 3. Then Seoul Dynasty, then the Spark, then Shanghai. Do I put Philly above? I'm going to put Philly above Shanghai. Houston goes above Shanghai. I think I might put Houston above Philly as well. Seoul needs to be lower. Fuck me, dude. You guys are. Wait, do you guys just want me to do my power rankings of what is the order in which they got knocked out of the tournament? If you guys just think Seoul is a terrible team, how do you think Seoul is below 4th now? Fucking recency Andes, guys. Like, what are we talking about? Seoul is not shit all of a sudden. Come on. It's 2 matches. Calm down. Dynasty lost to Spark and Rain. Oh yeah, that totally means that they lost to Spark and Rain. They must be just a worse team than them. God, yeah, like, yeah, they lost to them in that match. This is not the mid-season tournament rankings. This is, where do I think these teams are right now? Going into a new meta, going into a new tournament. I am absolutely putting Seoul above. I think Atlanta made a case for themselves to be 3rd. Like, I'm just going to give it to them because I think they deserve to be here. After just such an incredible run. And I feel like I trust this team to not be shit compared to a lot of these other teams. Feel like Florida should be higher. We have not got that low yet. Let's go tier break. I'm actually going to do a tier break here. Oh, fuck. I'm putting Dallas in below the tier break. Houston over Philly? Yeah. I can't tell you why. I just... Actually, no, I don't like that. Actually, no, I don't like that. Because if we're going into the next tournament, I like the flexibility of the Philadelphia Fusion over the Outlaws. Because Outlaws are going to run into the Dante Doomfist Pros. Merit over MN3, there's a lot more players that matter than just that. A Doom one-trick team? Here's the problem with everything that you guys are saying. Is you guys are reacting to just what happened in that most recent match. Do you guys think Philadelphia Fusion could replicate that kind of lower bracket run again? Remember, Philadelphia Fusion almost lost to the Florida Mayhem. Probably should have lost to the Florida Mayhem. I do not believe that Philadelphia Fusion should be there. Fuel in a Jungle Queen meta, we have no idea what the meta is going to be. And before you go, oh my God, contenders, that is not the patch that I think the league is playing on. And the league is going to change heavily if we end up in a Junker Queen Lucio Brig meta. I think Toronto stays last. I think I'm going to put London over Dallas. I think Dallas is in trouble. I think that's where I want to keep it. I think I'm okay with this. Does London jump the tier break? No. No. I love the London Spitfire, but do I think they deserve to be in this tier with the others? No. I think the only thing that I'm not sold on is like, does Shanghai deserve to be in this tier? Or am I just like, am I still holding on to the last 2 years? I think they should stay in this tier, but they're on thin ice. They're like Dallas for me. They're in a slow roll. Shanghai behind Florida. Everyone else is having a time. Yeah, I think they stay above the tier break just because Lip exists. Shanghai literally rolled Dallas 3-0. Yeah. Yeah, no. But that was like, that goes back to my point of that's because Lip exists in the world. I think this is where I want to leave it. Let me do a rough look at these teams. Chengdu, Boston, Valiant thing. Vancouver's going down ever since they lost. I'm going to put Charge up. Actually, I'm putting Vancouver Titans bottom until I see what their new DPS is. Because if their DPS lineup is just going to be Mirror Aspire, I just don't know how that DPS lineup works. I just don't understand how that's going to work. If there's like so few metas that think below Paris, yeah. Until their team makes sense, I'm not going to give them that. There's no way you can tell me that Mirror as their tracer player and False as their only tank player can be higher than this right now. Like, yeah, Paris has been sucking, but at least their team makes sense right now. So I assume there's going to be a signing. As I said, they stay here until I see the signing of the Vancouver Titans. There has to be something being signed soon to make it make sense. So we'll see. But NYXL though, yeah, I don't know. As I said, this all doesn't matter. These teams are all not doing so hot. But those are my power rankings. And that is my weekly recap. Now, I know it was a long one. I'm sorry. Obviously we wanted to talk about all the teams and the midseason madness and everything. I hope you guys found it insightful. I hope you guys found it interesting. Talking about everything that's happened on the league. I don't know how many matches I'm really going to review. I don't really like going back and talking about matches when we're never going to see that meta. We're never going to see that stuff. Maybe we'll watch the grand finals and we'll just sort of talk about the finals, and that'll give us time to sort of talk about what happened in the tournament. That's probably what's going to happen. But we'll play it by ear. I will be doing a meta report and another weekly recap starting next week. Obviously, as I said, there'll probably be some signings. There'll probably be some patch notes. We'll probably know what meta we're going to be playing on, or at least patch we're going to be playing on. So we'll keep an eye out for that one. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you guys want more Overwatch League reviews and action and all that kind of stuff. Make sure to like the video. Let me know what you guys think below. Do you guys think I'm overrating or underrating some of these teams heading out of the mid-season tournament? And also let me know what your favorite match was of the mid-season tournament, because there were a lot of bangers. Love you all, and I'll see you guys next time.